your proud defender of the working class majority, Rick Smith. Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So as I said at the opening, I was expecting something to happen today, either the filibuster or some kind of a vote or something on the January 6th commission, but nothing. And I agree with what Senator Dick Durbin, the senator from Illinois, had to say. He said, we have a mob overtake the Capitol and we can't get the Republicans to join us in making historic record of that event. He said, that's sad. This tells you what's wrong with the Senate, and what's wrong with the Senate is the filibuster. And here to share some thoughts on, is he right? Is it the filibuster? Does it have to go? Or are we afraid of what happens when it goes away and the Republicans get power? I've asked Kevin Gannon to come talk with us. Kevin is a history professor and the director of the Center for Excellence in Teaching and Learning at Grandview University. His website, thetattooedprofessor.com. Kevin, thanks for taking time for us.
Thanks for having me, Rick. Good to be with you.
So is Dick Durbin right? Is it the filibuster? Is that the problem? Or is it that we've got not enough Republicans with any courage or spine?
Well, more than one thing could be true, right? But I think that the chief problem in front of us, the most immediate one and the most urgent one, is the filibuster, yeah.
So now the most common response I get from people is, Rick, if you do away with the filibuster, Republicans may be in power someday, and then you'll be sorry. Will we be sorry?
No, I don't think so, because, it's not as if the Republicans have shown themselves to be bound by these sorts of good faith rules when they are in the majority, right? And so what we need to realize, if you want government that's actually responsive to the will of the voters, and the Senate is other than the Supreme Court, the Senate is the institution of our government that is least likely to be so. The equal representation apportionment, all of that means that, senators from Wyoming, represent far fewer people than a senator from California, but there's still two of them in the Senate each, right? And so what we have is we have an institution that's already predisposed to be anti-democratic, that is, to put the brakes on just pure majority rule. What the filibuster does is it takes that tendency and, basically puts it on steroids. It renders the institution, which was already an unresponsive one, pretty much inoperable. And, what the filibuster is not in the Constitution. It's a parliamentary tactic. It's been used off and on throughout U.S. history. But if you were to go and make a scatter plot as to when the filibuster was used in the Senate, you're going to find the highest concentration of its uses against civil rights legislation. It's a tactic with a definite history, a definite set of uses. And here we are again, with the conservative right-wing bloc in the Senate being able to wield it for those same purposes, and it's been used. So the filibuster isn't to protect the rights of a minority. What the filibuster is meant to do, and the way it's being used, is to be weaponized against actual responsive democratic governance.
Right. So what people actually want, not going to get, because, as you've pointed out, we don't have a representative democracy. When you look at the fact that 52 senators are elected by 18% of the population, something
Absolutely
wrong there.
Right. And the Democrats in the Senate now, they represent about 41.5 million more people than do the Republicans. And so you have this skewed situation now where basically Mitch McConnell and a very disciplined caucus can just throw a wrench into the gears of not just democracy, but a functional government. And so you get this sort of up is down sort of absurdity when, well, we don't need to investigate January 6th. It was a bunch of tourists, and that's our story, and we're sticking to it. And if they can wield the filibuster and have Joe Manchin so enthralled to this apparently sacred tradition, they get away with it. No. And that's the problem, because we're already at a crisis point in our society where people's faith in the government and in the project of governance is at an all-time low. And institutions and traditions like this that's going on in the Senate now is only going to make it worse. And that is primarily in the interest of the folks who don't believe in popular government.
Right. Now, the right wing is all just thrilled over the fact that, James Carville and geez, now the guy Axelrod have come out and come out against liberals, and it's, well, how did they put it? It's urban elitists and the intellectual class who are ruining the Democratic Party. And our message isn't resonating in those states where 52 senators are, elected by 18% of the population, and you're not going to reach those people. So it was, but the right's just tizzy over the fact. Look, they've got Democrats saying it's bad. Wokistan is destroying the country. See, we know.
And it's absurd because, I mean, these are people who have made their reputations off of being, political Svengalis, right? These infallible strategists. And they have completely lost sight of the ball. Again, the Democrats in the Senate represent 41.5 million more people than do the Republicans. And so if you're obsessing about, well, how do we track down, 300 more voters in Wyoming? And if your answer to that is to alienate half the people who voted for you in the Bronx, I'm sorry, that's just dumb. That's asinine. And what it shows, what the Democratic Party is wrestling with is this block of, I mean, you could use the word establishment, but folks who are so committed to what they see as the norms, the civility, the forms of the institution, the rituals that go behind it. And they've lost sight of the fact that those things are completely empty now, and they're being weaponized against them by the right.
And have been for a very long time. I mean, this is Lucy and Charlie Brown for the last at least 16 years.
Absolutely, and even back into the 80s with Reagan. Let's hold out the football and pull it away as soon as Charlie Brown runs off. It's the only people, and if you look at it now, look at the media narrative that surrounds this now. The Democrats are always expected to be bipartisan. And when the Republicans are obstructionists and doing stuff like, we don't need a January 6th commission, everyone's just like, oh, well, that's how they are.
They're united.
It's just hardball politics.
Yeah,
and it's just sort of, and the Democrats have created this, right? This false set of expectations. And now they feel that they have to live up to it, I guess. But it's all the more frustrating because it doesn't have to be the way that it is.
Yep. No, this is where I've been saying for years, and Rick Wilson got credit for the comment the other day of saying if you have power and don't use it, you're going to lose it. This is one of those things where you've got the keys to the steamroller, start rolling down the road.
Yeah, and it's like a boxing match where I decide I'm not going to throw a punch till the fourth round in the name of norms or civility, right? Well, the other guy has a minority, and we must be, we have to be concerned about political minority. So I'm going to let him hit me with a few haymakers until we get to round 5. I mean, it's absurd. It's and it doesn't make a compelling case for voters to continue to support the Democratic Party.
Yeah, I mean,
because you're going to lose any momentum you had behind the issues that drove people to the polls in, by the way, record numbers in 2020.
No, and I say this all the time. I mean, the reason I think, Democrats lost the white working class is, the Democrats stopped fighting for them. Most of the white working class, they want somebody who they perceive is going to fight for them. And even if it's the wrong fight, and I think Republicans have been the ones fighting a fight, the wrong one, but that sense of strength is something that that's appealing, and Democrats haven't done it. I used to say all the time, Democrats, if there's a street fight, they'll offer to hold your coat. Maybe. Right. I want somebody who's going to ball up their digits and get in there and mix it up. That's the party that needs to show up.
Yeah, and that's, the white working class, you're right. The Democrats stopped fighting for them because the Democrats have stopped fighting for the working classes, period.
Right.
Which is the most powerful multiracial coalition in this country. And when you have white workers who are committed who feel alienated and are committed to having somebody fight for them, and then the right says, we'll fight for you because you're white. Well, you're still fighting for me. And so all the potential that is embedded in working class politics and good, progressive, union-oriented working class politics has been co-opted for the last several decades. And it just amazes me because it's not like this is a state secret, right? I mean, this is fairly obvious stuff. And the leadership of the Democratic Party seems to almost existentially depend upon ignoring it.
Yeah. No, I mean, this is where I've been saying, and this is where unions served a real purpose. It brought people together. It got people to join into a common interest. And that common interest is better wages, hours, conditions, better opportunities for our families, better communities. That was what drew us together. And as Republican policy and some Democratic policy, there are Democrats who were responsible for the destruction of unions too. As that destroyed the union's ability to bring people together, those people sought other things out, and that's how you end up with the Q kooks and all these right wing militia groups and all of this insanity that's out there.
And the real irony of that is we have such an individualistic culture in the U.S., right? The idea I've got mine and screw the rest of you, and that ethic has been raised to be the standard of our politics now. But we need community. Unions formed that community for so many people. And when they waned and when they were eviscerated and their strength taken away, what has replaced that community, right? We talk a great game when it comes to individualism, but those community bonds, those bonds of fellowship, and now you have that with QAnon. Now you have that with evangelicalism. Like, you're part of a team and our team is going to dominate everybody before us. That gap has been filled. And that's the real tragedy. If we keep saying, well, we have to help individuals do this, we have to help individual middle-class people and individual working. No, we have to build solidarity. And we have to talk exactly in those terms.
Yep.
Because that's really where, the rhetoric is all about the individual, but politics is all about communities and mobilization.
And I'm right there with you. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're here with Kevin Gannon. Kevin's a professor of history and the director of the Center for Excellence in Teaching and Learning at Grandview University. You want to check out his work, thetattooedprof.com is the website there. But Kevin, back to the filibuster. I mean, there's got to be a moment, especially on this January 6th commission, where Schumer and the Democrats, you got to pull Simina and you got to pull Manchin into a room, and the rest of them say, look, they're giving us nothing. We've seen this movie before. It's not going to change. We've got to move forward and do away with this, or we're not going to get the January 6th commission. We're not going to get an infrastructure plan. We're not going to get anything done, and we're going to get slaughtered in 2022.
Exactly. And the Voting Rights Act is at the top of that list. I mean, this is, you read, I forget the author of the editorial column I read in the Washington Post today, democracy is not dead yet, but it's well on its way, right? This is a real hinge moment. And it's because of the filibuster, which again is this invented parliamentary trick. It's not embedded in the Constitution. It's not embedded in the original rules of the Senate. It has now become this sort of sacred cause to somebody like a Manchin or a Sinema. And I think that that's because it feeds their ego as well. But if that's the hit, like if a legitimate functioning democracy depends upon two senators saying, okay, we'll vote to end the filibuster, like that's not a really good sign of health for a democratic society.
No, you're right.
And, and the other argument that's right there staring everybody in the face is, okay, if you end the filibuster, stop worrying about what the Republicans are going to do, because they've already shown you that. They've already shown you what they're going to do. They'll end the filibuster. They'll ramrod judicial nominees through. Again, like you said, we've heard this song before, but we've also, from the Democratic side, we've tried adhering to norms. That has not worked yet. See what happens if you do something different. I mean, what other options are there at this point?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, what you're seeing from McConnell is the tried and true tested playbook that Republicans have used for Democrats for ages. It's stall, it's delay, it's pretend like we're going to negotiate. It's, oh, hey, we'll offer some amendments, to where at the end of the road, we already know they're never voting for anything that's going to, quote unquote, give a Democrat a win, even if it's good for their constituents. Never going to happen.
No, because it never has. And it's, you can imagine McConnell and other Republican senators sitting in caucus going, well, aren't those guys cute when they talk about norms and traditions? Right? Like, it's just, it's mind boggling. As DJ Collins says, congratulations, you played yourself. Right? Because that's, and for Schumer and Durbin and who are savvy politicians in other respects, right? Like this huge blind spot with the Senate and the clubbiness and the aura and the tradition. That's a real problem. And I think that's, for the long-term senators in particular, I wonder if that's a big part of the calculus, is they have this blind spot because they're so loyal to the actual institution. We heard it from Biden in the campaign. Oh, yeah, when I was in the Senate, I worked with Republicans all the time, the country club civility sort of atmosphere. But that hasn't been a thing since the Obama administration.
Right. Oh, that hasn't been a thing, really not a thing, going back, to the Clinton era. I mean, the one thing that I wanted out of Bill Clinton was filibustered by Bob Dole, which was strike replacement. We didn't get that. And I keep coming back to this, the things that working people need and want seem to always meet the razor's edge of the filibuster. But yet the things that Republicans want, like tax cuts and judicial nomination, that doesn't seem to matter with the filibuster. And they get what they want while continually blocking what we, the people, need.
Yeah, and they're able to cloak it in a discourse about minority rights, like we have to protect the rights of the minority. And that's a really effective argument because that, people resonate with that. Like, yes, we have to make sure that, you don't get trampled by the majority. But there's a difference between protecting minority rights and actively undermining popular government, right? There's a distinction to be made there. And the filibuster is on the wrong side of that distinction. The filibuster is not about protecting minority rights. It's about ending responsive governance, period.
Yeah, but it's one of those, and just the wording of it makes me laugh on a certain level. They want to protect minority rights except for actual minorities, much like they want to protect life except for, after everyone's born. It's one of those weird kind of scenarios that just doesn't seem, when you look at it in the bigger picture, doesn't seem right.
No, it's, there are all these interesting paradoxes that have just become so routine that we don't even notice them anymore. We're just sort of, they're using basically doublespeak, newspeak from Orwell's 1984. And we're so used to it now that it just passes without us remarking on it. But when you stop and look at it, like you just said, it's absurd. It is literally saying up is down and black is white and, tall is short and all these other things. And that's just, that's what the Republican Party does. And everybody, that's how they are. And they get away with it now because they just have. And that's a real bad place for us to be as a society. When it's not just the stuff that's happening that is getting it passed, but the fact that there's not even an effort anymore to talk about accountability.
That's crazy.
That's not a healthy democracy.
No, I'm right there with you. About 30 seconds left. So as you're paying attention to this, I guess into the next week, because I don't think anything's going to happen today, maybe not even tomorrow. How are you seeing this play out?
How do I want it, or how do I see it?
How do you see it? I think we agree. We want to move on. We want to get things moving. We want infrastructure bill. We want the For the People Act. We want to get some things done. We want to get the work done. But how do you think it's actually going to play out?
I think with the January 6th commission in particular, I think what you're going to see happen is maybe 4 or 5 Senate Republicans come over to vote in favor of it, but the initiative fail and the filibuster remain because Manchin, I think he's so ego tied into being this pivotal figure that he can't give that up. And unfortunately, that's where I see us in that. Now, does that trigger a reaction where the Biden administration says, okay, now let's nuke the filibuster? We'll see about that. But in the short term, unfortunately, I see it playing out that way.
Yeah, sadly, I agree with you. But Kevin, I appreciate the time. Great talking with you. Always a good time. Thanks.
All right, thanks, Rick. Always appreciate being with you.
Good stuff. Kevin Gannon, professor of history and director of the Center for Excellence in Teaching and Learning there at Grandview University. Make sure you check out his website, thetattooedprof.com. We'll get links out on social media. Quick break. Right back. Stick around.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.